Hello, I'm Philip Stoten. I'm at Apex 2014 in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I'm joined by Randy Cherry, who is the Director of Validation Services at IPC. Randy, good to see you. Thanks for stopping by.
It's good to see you too, and I'd like to thank you for this opportunity.
That's a pleasure. I'm going to give you a really easy question to start with. Your job title, Director of Validation Services. What are validation services?
Well, thank you. Validation Services is basically a series of industry programs where we're providing auditing, certification, and testing services to the companies in the industry. Basically what we're doing is we're building programs around heavily used IPC standards.
Right.
For example, like J Standard 1, IPC 610, or more on the assembly side. And we have two types of programs, a QPL and a QML program. QPL stands for Qualified Products Listing. This is a situation where we're looking around heavily used standards, as I mentioned, J Standards 4, 5, and 6, which are your solder fluxes, your solder paste, and your solders. Basically what we're doing is we're providing auditing of the solder companies. We're looking at the products that they make, and they have to be tested in accordance with the TM650 test methods.
Right.
This particular program also uses third-party test labs as part of the validation.
So yeah, you're adding to basically a well-known standard. You're adding the validation service to the end, the certification service. That makes a lot of sense. How does that work internationally? Is that done just in the US or just here?
Well, the program is very new. I've only been an employee of IPC for about 1 year now. I have over 30 years experience in the EMS industry, working in very different market segments: telecom, automotive, consumer. So I have a heavy background in the OEM industry, and basically that's helped me with this position. Now, to answer your question, we're starting out in North America. But we have plans to expand in China, India, and Europe. As you know, IPC has offices all over the world. And this program is still internal to IPC, so I'll be working with the other IPC locations, providing training auditors, and then the program will continue to grow. And we'll continue to add other programs as time moves on.
And you told me what QPL stood for, but you also mentioned QML.
QML is a new program that we basically just introduced here at the show this week. QML stands for Qualified Manufacturers List. And at the keynote on Tuesday, we presented the first QML certification to IEC Electronics. They were kind of like our beta site audit or your first audit, and it went extremely well. I certified the Newark, New York facility and the Albuquerque, New Mexico facility. And on top of that, I also qualified their test lab, Dynamic Research Systems, as an approved test lab to add to that third-party testing I talked about earlier.
And again, you're doing that reflecting IPC standards, so when someone looks at that validation, they have all the background documentation to support it.
And I want to add to that too, not only is the program in accordance with the IPC standards, I want to let people know too that this auditing program is not a paper-based audit. It's a very technical, in-depth process audit. My audits are done right out on the facility floor. Now there's some paperwork you have to look at, of course, but it's basically more of a real-time audit, talking to the people out on the floor and getting first-hand knowledge that they really are following the IPC standards.
So I can see a couple of positions where that's going to be interesting to me. One, I'm an OEM and I'm looking for a contract manufacturer that's following those standards and I want that validation. Or two, I'm a contract manufacturer and I'm looking for that as maybe an additional USP. In those two situations, how do I access you? How do I access the service?
It's a searchable database. So an OEM can say you're not happy with your current EMS supplier because he's not providing a good service, like let's say conformal coating. You can go to the IPC website, punch in conformal coating, it'll do a search, and it'll give you all of the EMS companies that meet J Standard 1 for conformal coating.
Makes perfect sense. And if I'm a contract manufacturer with, I don't know, 20 sites worldwide, that's a big project. Do you have the kind of internal resources to do that in terms of audit? How does that process work?
Today, as I said earlier, the program is kind of in its infancy a little bit. I'm currently the architect of the program, but I'm also doing all the auditing. And that's tough. I recently just added someone to help me with the sales and marketing. But my plan is once I get the programs, let's say, stable, I also have put together a criteria list on how I want to pick and choose new auditors.
Yeah,
they can't just be someone who knows the standard, like a trainer. They have to have auditing experience, and they also have process knowledge of how the world works for printed circuit boards and assembly. So it's going to be a process where we're going to probably find some folks, train them, and bring them up to speed. I may shadow them a couple of times on some early audits, and then the program, will continue to grow.
So you're going to get plenty of air miles.
Yes.
You're going to have to build a team around it, but it sounds like a really interesting project. Randy, thanks for your time. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you for your time too.
Thank you.
Yep, bye.